Well, it's week 5, but before we can close the door on this week, we have to discuss the Jacksonville Jaguars hosting the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. Should be a really good and competitive game between these two teams. But what you're seeing up on the screen in front of you right now is a slip that I sent out to Dub Club members yesterday. Now, if you're asking yourself, what is Dub Club? That is my VIP community where you get even more picks, plays, and parlays that I can provide here on YouTube in a short form video. So if you're interested in that and you want to get signed up, there's a link down in the pinned comment below. Definitely check it out. But as you can see here, we went fantasy score heavy on NFL yesterday and hit quite a few. And in this one, I just happened to get lucky and get 6 out of 6 right. I turned $30 into $750 over on PrizePicks. That's a 25x multiplier. And there were people in there hitting $4,000 slips. There were people in there hitting $100 slips. I mean, we were hitting everything last Sunday. So if you're interested in that and you want to get signed up, 50% off your first month of Dub Club. If you've never been in my Dub Club before and you want to get these picks, plays, and parlays, stats, and information, be a part of a friendly community that's helping each other win more together, definitely check this out. Take advantage of that first month where you're going to get half off of your membership. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the PrizePicks board. Like I said, we've got a pretty nice game tonight between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This one has an implied total of about 45.5 points. Not real low, but not real high either. And the Jaguars, even though they're the home team, are 3.5 point underdogs in this game. So they expect Kansas City to win here on the road. But with that out of the way, let's start first with the Kansas City side of things. And as you may have seen, I'm liking some Xavier Worthy tonight at 13 fantasy score. Going back to the fantasy scores, they treated us really good all weekend. Hopefully tonight we get more of the same. But Xavier Worthy now is back for his second game since sitting out with that shoulder injury, thanks to Travis Kelce just kind of bum rushing him on a crossing play. But he seemed to look pretty good last week, putting up a healthy number of fantasy points, 17.1 to be exact, against the Baltimore Ravens. So Xavier Worthy looks healthy to me. He looks fine and ready to go tonight. And he's got a pretty good matchup here against the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. If we take a look here at some of the matchups, the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers, Xavier Worthy will see a lot of Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell has been absolutely roasted this season, giving up a lot of big plays, giving up a lot of touchdowns. So I'm not too worried about Campbell holding Xavier Worthy down tonight. So the 13 fantasy score, he's going to be able to rack up fantasy points in a number of ways. Every reception is going to be worth a point. He's going to get points for receiving yards. He's going to get points for rushing yards. And we know Xavier Worthy is involved in the run game. They usually dial up a couple of running plays for him per game. And if he gets loose, the guy's one of the fastest receivers in the league, and he could break for a big run. So you got that going for you as well. And of course, there's touchdown equity and upside against Campbell for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Xavier Worthy looking pretty good here at 13 fantasy score, but forget what I think. Let's take a look at some of the projection models. And for these projection models, we go to a couple of different options here. We're going to start with this one, which is RotoWire. RotoWire does a really good job with not only NFL player props and picks, and not only for PrizePicks, but they support a lot of different sites. Underdog, DraftKings Pick 6, Sleeper, FanDuel Sportsbook, DraftKings Sportsbook, BetMGM, and a whole bunch of other sports books as well. So you can use RotoWire's projections and their tools for NFL, NBA, which is right around the corner, MLB, which is currently in the postseason. They cover college football. They cover the NHL, which starts tomorrow, and a number of other sports. So definitely check out RotoWire. You can save 15% off of any membership. Link in the description of today's video. But now that we've got Xavier Worthy's name pulled up here, we just go down and take a look at his fantasy score projection. He's projected for about 13.19 fantasy points. Again, he scored 17.1 against Baltimore in his return last week. Forget about this game against the Chargers. He pretty much got knocked out right at the beginning of the game and therefore did not contribute because he didn't really play much. So 17.1 in his season debut against Baltimore last week looked pretty darn good to me. Taking a look at some other projections, though. RotoWire, a great tool, but we've got other projection models that we can look at, like the Blitz by my guy Derek Carty. And when we punch in Xavier Worthy's name there, you can see he's projected for about 14.95 fantasy points. So almost 15 fantasy points, a differential of about 2 fantasy points. So that one's looking good as well. If we slide on over here to Fantasy Labs, Sean Kerner, one of the best in the business when it comes to all things football, whether that be fantasy football, whether that be projections. Really sharp guy is Sean Kerner. He's got him projected at 16.23 fantasy points for Xavier Worthy, so 3.2 plus fantasy score differential there. So that's looking really good. We'll head on over to LineStar and look at Worthy. Worthy's projection over on LineStar is 16.63, so another big projection for Xavier Worthy. So a lot of these projection models are liking Worthy over 13 fantasy points, so that's pick number 1. Let's get that one out of the way. Pick number 2, Patty Mahomes. This guy, known to break the pocket. What I mean by that is he'll tuck it and run. And I'm looking to go back to his rushing attempts at 4.5. And the reason being is through weeks 1, 2, and 3, he went over this line of 4.5 rushing attempts. Last week, he did not. But against Jacksonville in the past, he did go over 4.5 rushing attempts. So maybe this is a bounce back game. Monday Night Football, Mahomes going to leave it all out on the field, tuck and run. And that's what I'm banking on here. And that's what the projections seem to indicate as well, that Mahomes will be running the football tonight. So let's take a peek at some of these projections. We're going to start first with some of sportsbook data on this one. For this one, we could go over to one of my favorite optimizers, the only optimizer that I use these days. I've ditched the Daily Grind Fantasy Optimizer. I am now on Prop Professor. And again, if you want to save money on your Prop Professor subscription, there's links to everything that I use here on screen down in the description below. But taking a look here, the Prop Professor gives this one about a 51.2% chance of going over. He's at 4.5 rushing attempts on pretty much all books. More of the money is slightly coming in on the over than it is on the under. So this one doesn't have a huge edge or advantage to it, but once we factor in the success he's had this season, the success he's had against Jacksonville in the past, and some of these projection models that have him going over 4.5 rushing attempts, I think this is a good data-backed, data-driven play. So let's move over to RotoWire's projections for Patrick Mahomes' rushing attempts. It's not a huge projection for the over, but it is slightly over 4.56. We can take a look at some of the hit rates here for the 2025 season. You can see in week 1 against the Chargers, 6 rushing attempts, 7 against Philly in week 2, 5 against the New York Giants in week 3, and he had 4 runs against Baltimore, coming really close to clearing that 4.5 number. He needed 1 more carry, didn't get it done. So again, I like the consistency that I'm seeing here. 4+ rushing attempts per game so far this season, going over in 3 out of 4 games. And then against Jacksonville, the last time he played them was September the 17th at Jacksonville, which is where this game will be hosted, is on the road at Jacksonville. He had 7 rushing attempts against the Jaguars the last time they met head-to-head. So 1 for 1 against Jacksonville in recent matchup. So things looking pretty good here for Mahomes. Let's get you a couple other projections on Mahomes and his rushing attempts. Again, we're going to go take a look at the Bats projection. The Blitz. The Bat is Derek Carty's MLB projection model, which I've been using all MLB season long. Made me a profitable bettor. But the Blitz is his NFL projection model. You can find the link for this down in the description as well. 4.7 projected rushing attempts. So closer to that 5 number than 4 rushing attempts is his projection according to the Blitz. Let's head on over here and take a peek at the Sean Kerner and Chris Raybon projection for Patrick Mahomes. And when we punch in Mahomes' name over there, you're going to see a projection of 4.9 rushing attempts, putting him really close to 5 or more, and we cash on this particular pick. So both Sean Kerner, Chris Raybon, again, some of the sharpest projection models and minds out there behind those models when it comes to NFL-related props and such. So they've got Mahomes almost at 5 rushing attempts. LineStar, another great tool. Let's take a peek at LineStar real quick. Mahomes is sitting out here at a total of 4.4 rushing attempts, but you can see the consensus projections for Mahomes, 4.8 rushing attempts. So a little higher on the consensus projection than the LineStar projection for Mahomes. And then last but not least, FanDuel Research, formerly known as NumberFire. Another great tool in terms of projections. 4.82 is their projection for his rushing attempts. Again, kind of closer to that 5 number than the 4 number for Patty Mahomes. So I'm looking to take an over here at 4.5 rushing attempts with Mahomes playing on Monday night. Now, let's move things over to the Jacksonville Jaguars side of things, starting with Brian Thomas. Now, I was kind of torn here. If you like Brian Thomas, you go with Brian Thomas. If you like Travis Henry, you could go with Henry. Both of these guys look pretty good, though, in terms of their receiving targets tonight. Brian Thomas sitting at 7.5 receiving targets. When I was taking a look at the matchups here, the wide receiver versus cornerback matchup, the receiver for Jacksonville that had the highest advantage score or grade was Brian Thomas at 1.17. He'll be matched up a lot tonight against Trent McDuffie, cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He typically slots over at the right cornerback position, so Brian Thomas will see a lot of him. And based on that matchup, he's got the highest score of any of the Jacksonville Jaguars receivers. The next closest would be Travis Hunter at 1.07 advantage score, and then he's got a plus 0.15 matchup advantage as well against Jamari Connor. So you could go Thomas, you could go Hunter. I'm going to go Thomas in this case. I just feel like he's due to see a few extra targets tonight in this matchup against Kansas City. So I'm liking the over on the 7.5 receiving targets. Of course, we're going to look at the projections for these. So let's go ahead and do that now. Brian Thomas over here on RotoWire at 7.5 receiving targets, projected for 8.23 receiving targets tonight. He's only went over this number one time, and that was week 2 against the Cincinnati Bengals. He has had some very close calls in other games, though. 7 against Carolina, 6 against Houston, and 7 against San Francisco. I just think that maybe tonight is the night he gets back on track. But loving this projection here of 8.23 receiving targets for Brian Thomas on a line of just 7.5. So they have him going over in that regard. Taking a look at the blitz, Brian Thomas's projection over there for his receptions. If you take a look, his receiving targets are at 8.6. So that puts him over by a whole target, 1.1 higher projection than his line at 7.5. So that's looking pretty juicy as well. Taking a look at his projection over on Fantasy Labs. Again, this is Sean Kerner and Chris Raybon's projections put together to give you this consensus. If you go and take a look at the, actually they don't have receiving targets. Never mind. They don't have receiving targets for him over there. So let's move over to LineStar. Brian Thomas's targets on LineStar sitting at 9, a huge projection there. So they really like him to go over that 7.5 number. And then taking a look at the FanDuel research page, they have him at 8.14 targets. So pretty much consensus across the board over on Brian Thomas at 7.5 receiving targets, which brings us to our fourth and final play. I had a hard time getting you 2 picks from Jacksonville, and this one is going to be kind of a iffy play, but there was definitely some value when you kind of compare Parker Washington's receiving yard line to some of the projection models that are out there. Parker Washington, kind of the third or fourth option in this pass game. You've got obviously Brian Thomas. You've got Brenton Strange, the tight end. And then probably Hunter. And then I would probably say after Hunter, it would probably be Parker Washington. So he's like the fourth receiving option on this team. But 15.5 receiving yards has been a number that he has cleared with ease in 2 out of the previous 4 games that they've played in. And hopefully tonight he gets back on track and does it again. It's not asking a whole lot. He's probably going to get, 2 to 3 receptions, somewhere around there. So if he can turn those receptions into, nice gains of 8+ yards per reception, then he should clear this line pretty easily, especially if he gets some of that yards after catch. But let's take a look at the projections here for my guy, Mr. Washington. Starting with this first projection, which is, of course, RotoWire. RotoWire's got him all the way up at 22.39 receiving yards. 22.39 receiving yards. And he had 76 receiving yards against Cincinnati in week 2, 34 receiving yards against Houston in week 3. The other 2 games, week 1 against Carolina, 0. And then week 4 against San Francisco, 0. So very much feast or famine. This one carries more risk probably than some of the other picks. But when he feasts, he really feasts. It's either he's going to go way over 15.5 or he's going to get you nothing. So that's kind of what you're dealing with here with Parker Washington through 4 weeks of the NFL season. Take a look at some other projections, though. Now that we know that he's projected for about 22.4 receiving yards on RotoWire, where is he at on some of these other sites? Parker Washington over on the Blitz, 27.65 projected receiving yards. That's a huge number, almost double what his line is at 15.5. So when I see a big differential between these projection models and his line, I mean, I just look at that as a betting opportunity and I roll the dice on it. Taking a look at another one, the receiving yards for Parker Washington over on Fantasy Labs. They've got him at 18.9, close to 19. The mean projection, 24 receiving yards for Parker Washington. So projections looking good there from Chris Raybon and Sean Kerner. Line Stars projection for Washington, also a favorable one, which is why I'm mentioning it. 21 receiving yards. The consensus projection's about 27.4 receiving yards. So they're loving some Parker Washington. And then last but not least, taking a peek at the FanDuel research page, they've got Parker Washington's receiving yards at 30.42 receiving yards. So a lot of love for Parker Washington on the over for 15.5. Last but not least, I'll show you what he's looking like on the sports books. He's at 15.5 receiving yards on the sports books, giving him about a 50.5% chance of going over. Most books have him at 15.5. There's a couple books that have him at 14.5. So if you could find him at 14.5, yeah, it's only 1 yard, but sometimes 1 yard is all the difference in the world. So if you find him at 14.5, I guess take him at 14.5. I'm okay with taking him at 15.5. I'm not that worried about that 1 yard. Yeah, all the projection models love Parker Washington over 15.5 receiving yards. And so that's pick number 4. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for you today. Let me know down in the comment section below if there's any picks from the Kansas City side or the Jacksonville side that you're really liking today. Leave them down in the comment section below. I love to get your feedback. Love to hear what you're liking, hating about either my picks or your picks. Leave it down in the comment. We'll catch you in the next video real soon. Good luck on all your picks, plays, and parlays. And if you're in Dub Club, we'll see you on the inside. Peace.